if you work at a big company where there's sort of more structure around it, one thing that I would do is look for someone that's where you want to be professionally in your next career step, and then see what it is that they're doing well and try to have that same path. I don't think anyone's path is linear professionally, but I do think that there's common elements to the general trend of being successful at a company. Hi everyone, I'm Ilse Calderon. I'm originally from Mexico, but have been living here in San Francisco for some time. And I recently started a new role as Chief of Staff at Forge. So when I first graduated from college, I was really interested in what the financing side of a startup looked like. And having gone to school here in Silicon Valley, I really saw that as two main ways, either venture capital or venture debt. And so I started my career at a bank called Silicon Valley Bank that was primarily focused on venture debt. And so what they did is they provided lines of credit, essentially debt, to startups that they later had to pay back at some level of interest. So I did that for about a year, realized that it was kind of boring in the sense that they were essentially just following what the venture capitalists were investing in. And so I wanted to pursue the venture capital path. And so I ended up joining a very early stage fund here in San Francisco called Oboe Fund. And I joined as an associate at a really interesting point where the partner had just closed the second fund. And he was essentially looking for someone to join him and build it out and, double the amount of companies that we invest in. And so I was with him throughout the course of the entire second fund and then some of Fund 3. After that, I really wanted to get my feet wet in operations. Venture's amazing and it taught me a lot, but it was always very breadth as opposed to depth. And I really just wanted to get closer to the operation side of a business, so the actual day-to-day execution. And that's what led me to business operations. And then 3 months ago, I joined Forge as Chief of Staff. So to explain a little bit more Chief of Staff role, in a private company, or really just in general a tech company, that role is really focused on taking on initiatives that whoever you're working for, whether it's the CEO, the CTO, don't have time for because they already have a lot on their plate. And so, for example, right now, one of the things that I'm working on is bringing on an additional team of 50 people in order to be able to fulfill our deliverables in the next 2 years as opposed to the next 4 years. And so my day-to-day consists of anything from vendor relationships to vendor negotiations to managing the budget and understanding how we're going to afford all of these resources and then what the pros and cons of these decisions are. You spend so much more time at work than you do with your friends, your family. So what a shame if you're not enjoying it. Now, I'm not saying that every day is going to be amazing, hoorah, everything's winning and going the right way. But I do think, if you think about it as a trend line, it's okay to go like this. Some days, they're not great, some are better, but for it to be up and to the right in that sense. And for me, I just really enjoy my job. And I think a big part of it, not to sound cheesy, but it's the people that I work with. But then the other part of it really has to do with understanding, if I do a really good job today, then today, this week, this month, in a year from now, here's what success looks like for the company. And what about that can I attribute to myself and what I've helped the company succeed and achieve? I think that what keeps me excited about jobs I've done in the past and even my current one is the fact that every day is different, truly. And most of the times I'm doing things that I've never done before. And so I get excited by being able to tackle that problem, especially in a way that if I encounter it again, then I sort of have a playbook. But right now, to me, it's mostly about building playbooks that will help make things better in the future. Professionally, success to me means looking back and seeing a trajectory where you are learning and improving, but also having impact on those around you, as well as having mentors that can elevate you, and then you yourself also having mentees that you can help and see their progress. Well, I think at the end of the day, if you want to be good at your job, you have to have impact. And one of the biggest ways to have impact is by achieving something that is tied to the company goals. I think it happens when you're not really too focused on progress and you're more focused on accomplishing and unblocking the next steps of whatever project initiative that you're working on, and you're doing it in a way that aligns with the company's goals. Being successful at that is in finding the right balance between what you want to be doing, what you're good at, and improving that stuff that you might not be great at, but that is invaluable to elevate and unlock that next career goal that you have. And then personal success to me means waking up each morning and enjoying what you're doing and having balance in all parts of your life. Just pulling off that runner's high analogy, I think that comes not at the beginning, not the first 5-10 minutes. It comes like minute 30 plus in. And so pulling from that to worker's high, I also don't think it comes from like the first couple of tasks or initiatives that you're working on, but it comes a little bit later down the line when you feel like you're doing a good job because you understand the inner workings. You know, I spent a lot of time in venture capital most of my career. And for me, the closest worker's high I got in that industry were when I actually invested in founders, and then a couple of months, years down the line, they reach a milestone that we had talked about in earlier conversations that seemed so far out of reach, but then it happened. And the little tiny role that I played in that, to me, was worker's high. If you work at a big company where there's sort of more structure around it, one thing that I would do is look for someone that's where you want to be professionally in your next career step, and then see what it is that they're doing well and try to have that same path. I don't think anyone's path is linear professionally, but I do think that there's common elements to the general trend of being successful at a company. I think once you stop learning and stop being curious about your work, then it could mean a couple of things. One, maybe it's time to switch companies. Maybe that's the problem. Or maybe the people that you're working with and the people managing you do not align with what you want or where you want to be at next. So those could be a couple of the reasons. But I do think it's important not to stay too focused to a specific company, but be more focused on what you want to achieve professionally, because it doesn't mean staying at one company, especially nowadays when people switch companies all the time and the market keeps changing, so you never know what to expect. Like maybe 5 years from now, you have a role that didn't even exist today. So you kind of have to, I think it's important to be open to that. Otherwise, you'll miss out on other opportunities that could be a better aligned. The biggest thing is consistency. It's easy to wake up one morning and say, okay, today I'm going to be really focused and I'm going to do these things to have more success. But it's harder doing that every single day. And I almost think it's better and more important to focus on it, let's say 15-20 minutes every single day, as opposed to just one day a month for the entire day. So consistency.